Falcon 9
Trying to fix the mic, my
integration
work
engineer
wouldn't
here at SpaceX. We're
wouldn't
coming
show
up
up.
on 9.5 minutes to
The
launch, and to
audio
get to this
input
point,
wouldn't
we
come
rolled
in.
Falcon 9 out to the pad Sunday night, about 41
But
hours
I
before
solved
launch.
that, I think.
We went vertical on the pad at roughly 10 a.m. local time yesterday. The chief engineer held his technical poll at T-minus 1 hours, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go, no-go poll at T-minus 38 minutes. The vehicle is healthy. We are currently working, no issues. Now, if we do have to call a hold on today's launch, we have a backup opportunity tomorrow
They will have to scrub,
at
yeah.
3:51 Eastern Time in the afternoon. That's about 4 minutes earlier than today's opening of the window. Now, right now, we're targeting the end of the window just after 16:10 Eastern Time for liftoff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after the go-no-go polls, Falcon 9 has been loading propellants. Began at T-minus 35 minutes. We began with fuel going into both the first and second stage, oxidizer into the first stage. For fuel, we use a refined form of kerosene known as RP1, rocket propellant grade 1. Our oxidizer is a
Which is basically
super-chilled
just jet
liquid
fuel.
oxygen, and we call that LOX. Now, currently, the
Quite
second
similar.
stage that you can see outlined with that gray paint that Shiva mentioned, that fuel is completely loaded. We're still loading fuel on the first stage. That'll go until T-minus 6 minutes. And as you can see from the plume streaming off of the first and second stage LOX tanks,
first stage is
we're also
brand new for
loading
this launch.
helium gas onboard storage vessels on the first and second stage.
It hasn't been
Falcon 9
flown.
uses
It's not
helium
reused.
gas as a pressurant in the fuel and the LOX tanks. As the Merlin engine pumps pull RP1 and LOX out of the tanks, we have to fill the empty volume, what we call ullage, with helium that is heated by the engine. Heating the helium helps expand it to fill the tanks. Now at T-minus 7 minutes coming up here, engine chill will begin. We'll hear that call out. This is where we allow a small amount of the super chilled liquid oxygen to flow past the turbopump inlets. That cools them down to avoid thermal shocks when we light the Merlin engines at T-minus 2 seconds. Finally, you can see to the left of the rocket is the transport erector, what we also call the strongback. That will retract away from the rocket about 2 degrees at T-minus 4 minutes. That gives the necessary clearance for Falcon 9 to begin the liftoff sequence.
And then
Now,
as
Falcon
it
9,
lifts
we
off,
have
it'll
the
fill back
spacecraft.
to like
The spacecraft
45
team
or
has
further.
transitioned the GPS satellite to internal battery power. That happened at T-minus 15 minutes. They're working no issues, and there are no further actions required of the satellite before launch. We're launching out of the eastern range, and currently the range is go. They're ready to support the air and the sea
Looks like a great
space
day
is
out
clear
there.
around us. They've also been launching the balloons for us to help get the weather. The weather from clouds, lightning, electric fields right now is go. What we've been watching is the upper altitude winds. The gradient from one altitude to the other has been borderline where we might exceed the load capability.
Water
of
level is
Falcon
pretty
9.
high in the
We are
river there.
currently go. We will get one last weather balloon piece of data coming up here in a couple of minutes. But right now, all systems continue to be go for a liftoff just after 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, today's mission is for the United States Space Force, and we're launching the GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 3 as our payload. Now we'll hear from Lieutenant Colonel Margaret Sullivan, Material Leader of the GPS-3 Space Vehicles, and Tanya Ladwig, Acting Vice President of Navigation Systems at Lockheed Martin, to learn more about today's satellite.
Funky music.
We use GPS every day.
Today, everyone has GPS technology in their pocket.
It's 25 years of space-based position, navigation, and timing, supporting the entire world.
GPS touches the lives of everyday people all the time. It's changed the way we work, it's changed the way we play with over 4 billion users worldwide. We're already preparing for the next generation of GPS satellites with our GPS-3 follow-on contract, and we're inserting greater technology for greater capability.
brand new United States Space Force owns this premier asset and provides this position, navigation, and timing service to everyone.
And for all personnel on the countdown net, we have an update from GNC informing us we have a good weather balloon. Proceeding on with the countdown. T-minus 4 minutes, 20 seconds and counting.
Today's GPS-3 Space Vehicle 3 mission
Fun
is
little
dedicated
segment.
by the Space Force to the memory of Colonel Thomas Falserano, and we will hear directly from General Raymond and others who knew and worked with him just before we enter our first coast phase later on in the broadcast. Now we're currently just inside 4 minutes from liftoff. We did get the good news just a moment ago that the latest weather balloon is go for launch.
Excellent.
So we're going to continue to count down. We've begun retracting the transporter erector strongback away from the Falcon 9. You can see it on your screen. Moves back a couple of degrees to get us ready for liftoff. Now the Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. The vehicle remains in good health. Fuel loading is complete on both the first and second stages. Liquid oxygen loading will wrap up shortly on the first stage and will complete at T-minus 2 minutes on the second stage. At 1 minute before liftoff, you'll hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup. That means the rocket's own internal computers on first and second stage are controlling the launch countdown. The GPS-3 space vehicle continues to be go. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket.
Coming up in
The
T-minus
weather
3
has
minutes.
turned green for us here in the last minutes, and the range continues to be green for launch. Now again, as a reminder, if we don't launch today, we have a backup opportunity at 3:51 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.
First stage LOX load complete.
Launch director has just called out that the first stage LOX load is complete. We're now
Excellent.
loading just liquid oxygen on the second stage. Approximately half a minute, LOX loading should complete on stage 2.
That just means they're loading the oxidizer into the second stage into this tank right here.
T-minus 2 minutes. That announcement tells us that that chill-in that we began at T-minus 7 minutes has lasted long enough. And we are good for the ignition sequence on the Merlin engines coming up in just over a minute and 40 seconds. Now coming up in the background, you can see some white plumes coming off of the strongback.
Gas closing started.
There's a nice view.
Gas close
We
out.
have completed loading the second stage. We're now draining the liquid oxygen out of the plumbing that goes up that structure alongside the rocket.
And they're explaining
And
it.
as we vent off the gas, you get that nice long plume you see there where that humid Florida air meets the ultra cold gaseous oxygen, condenses, giving you that nice white fog. That's normal for this point in the count.
Falcons in startup. AFTS configured for flight.
Launch
Less than 1
director
minute
is
to go.
announced. We're inside of a minute. We are in startup on the flight computers. We are also beginning to pressurize
The
stage
vehicle
1
itself
and
is
stage 2
taking
for launch.
control of the
Mission directors go for
countdown.
launch.
That's good.
We've heard the final call-outs. Mission director, launch director are go for launch. So at T-minus 30 seconds coming up, all systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with
T-minus
GPS-3
30
Space
seconds.
Vehicle number 3.
If it stops for any reason, it'll be a scrub. So,
T-minus 15 seconds.
final count now.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
There we go.
Go Falcon, go GPS.
Vehicle is pushing down right. Heat chamber pressure down.
loud noises intensify. T plus 40 seconds.
T plus 40 seconds. We've heard call-outs.
Thank you,
And now we're entering the throttle
John.
bucket. We're powering down the Merlin engines to relieve the acceleration as we get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket. Now we're beginning to power back up.
Coming up from
Here's
max
the
Q.
call out exiting throttle bucket. The 9 Merlin 1D engines going back to full power.
It went
And we
supersonic.
are now supersonic.
Thank you, John.
Max Q.
Guidance engineer calls out max Q, the period of maximum dynamic pressure, or Q, on the vehicle. From this point forward, although we
Max
go
Q is
faster and faster,
pretty late,
the thinner
honestly.
atmosphere will put less loads on the airframe of the rocket.
It'll be interesting to see how long the first stage burn
stage engine.
goes.
We've got a good trajectory.
And back engine chill started.
We've begun the chilling of the upper stage engine. Power on the Merlin 1D engines looks good. Avionics reports everything is nominal. And we're T plus 2 minutes into flight. Next major activity in half a minute, shutdown of the 9 Merlin engines, separate the first and second stage, and ignite the second stage engine to carry GPS and the second stage into the first of 2 orbits today. This one will be the initial parking orbit.
Coming up on Miko.
Falcon 9 preparing for Miko.
And Miko.
T plus
Stage separation
235.
confirmed.
Pretty standard. A little bit of rotation.
And we've confirmed
on the second
ignition of
stage
the
there, but
second
that's fine.
stage engine after a good stage 1, stage 2 SEP. You could see briefly the Falcon 9 first stage in the background.
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
Call out that both
Thank you.
vehicles are following
Upgrade
the
your
planned
microphone.
trajectory. First stage continuing to coast to apogee, where it'll then slowly turn around and descend back to the drone ship for landing in the Atlantic Ocean. The second stage engine beginning the long burn to get it into the parking orbit.
Acquisition of signal, Maryland.
Coming up, fairing deploy. Waiting to see the camera switch forward.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And we've got fairing separation. The 2 halves of the Falcon 9 fairing separating.
Excellent.
The
You can see one
pneumatic
go
system
there.
unlatching the locks that hold it
See it?
together, and then the pneumatic pushers separating the 2 halves. As the fairing falls away from the vehicle, we can see on the left side of the screen the grid fins, the large titanium castings that are mounted to the first stage have deployed. They'll be used later as we come back into the atmosphere for precision guidance of the first stage to land on the drone ship.
You can see
On
some
the right-hand
ice
side, we see
falling
the
off of
second
the
stage
Acquisition
engine
first
stage.
continuing to burn. It's at full power. Everything's looking good with the trajectory. So at just past T plus 4 minutes into flight, everything is go on the flight of Falcon 9 with GPS 3, space vehicle number 3.
Plus 4 minutes and 25 seconds into flight. We're currently in the first of 2 planned Merlin vacuum engine burns. Currently looking at the data, the second stage engine burn is nominal. On your left-hand screen, you can see the first stage as it's performing that
The
reorientation.
first stage should
that
be
John and I
pretty
talked
close
about.
to
The
apparatus
grid fins are
at the moment,
deployed.
the
You're
highest
seeing
point
some-
in its
some
trajectory.
thruster plumes there from the attitude control system that are getting it ready so that the 9 Merlin 1D engines are pointed towards the atmosphere as it re-enters into Earth's atmosphere. Beautiful views of the planet beneath both the first stage and the second stage. Second stage is continuing into its burn. We're expecting this burn
Both
to
vehicles
last
continue to
about
follow nominal
5
trajectories.
minutes and 15 seconds. And entry burn will actually begin on the first stage in just about a minute from now. During the entry burn, we'll ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. That'll give us a chance to slow down the stage as it ends up re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and reduce the aerodynamic loads as it starts to bite into the thicker parts of the air around our planet.
It's coming down now.
You can see the Merlin vacuum engine on your right-hand screen, the nozzle extension there growing red hot. That's expected.
See the RCS.
We're really, we have such a long nozzle extension on there
RCS,
to try to get the most performance out of the pressure coming out of the thrust chamber on the second stage engine. So coming up here in about 15 seconds is entry burn. Watch for that on your left-hand screen. That'll ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines.
Should be coming up
while
now.
the second stage continues to burn towards that elliptical
repositioning
orbit
itself.
with the GPS vehicle on board.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Seeing the RCS being used to settle the propellant. Should be starting any moment now. There it is.
Stage 1 entry burn has started.
There's successful ignition of the
There's
3 Merlin
auto
1D
two
engines
engines.
on the first stage.
Auto
We're
two
expecting
engines
this
off.
burn to last just about 30 seconds.
It's booking it.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
You see some bursts there. Successful shutdown of the engine and some attitude control bursts just to get that orientation right. Now, once we get into the thicker parts of the atmosphere where those grid fins have some aerodynamic control authority,
Clouds are
they will
great.
do most of the guiding to take the first stage towards our drone ship named Just Read the Instructions, which is about 350 nautical miles off the east coast of Florida. Coming up at about 50 seconds
Better
from
lose
now,
signal.
we'll have 2 events happening
Lost
about
signal.
the same time. The first stage will ignite its single center Merlin 1D engine for landing burn.
It's just through the instructions,
about the
right?
same time, the second stage will perform secondary engine
Stage
cutoff,
2 has entered terminal guidance.
or SECO number 1. Now, while those 2 things occur, about 25 seconds later, the first stage will hopefully touch down on our drone ship. In between, they're deploying its landing legs. So watch for that on your left-hand screen.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Drone ship AOS. Stage 1 landing burn is starting.
Ignition of that center
Should
Merlin
be any
engine
moment
on the
now.
first stage.
SECO 1.
There's the
Successful
vibrations.
confirmation of shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine. The guidance engineer is evaluating the orbit of the second stage now.
Nominal parking orbit.
Nominal parking orbit,
Landing
that's
legs are
exactly what we want to
deployed.
hear. Landing leg deployment looks like right down the center.
And
Looks
like a
successful landing.
Recovery operators move into
I see
procedure
it first
11 on 100
stage.
on
Excellent.
That landed pretty close to the
So
camera.
that, we first flew Falcon 9 10 years ago, actually this month. Since then, it's completed 88 missions, is now the most flown operational rocket in the United States. This mission completed its first landing, and hopefully we'll have many more to come. The vehicle
Looks pretty clean, actually.
Now we're actually going to enter into our first coast phase, now that we know that the second stage is in a successful parking orbit. That coast phase will last about 54 minutes and will end with our second stage relight at about T+1 hour and 3 minutes. We're going to come back shortly before that to cover the second engine start, number 2. Now, as we had mentioned earlier, today's mission is dedicated by the Space Force to the memory of Colonel Thomas Falzerano, commander of the 21st Space Wing at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado. As a leader of the Air Force's 5th largest wing, he commanded a workforce of approximately 4,300 space professionals worldwide. We'll now hear from General Raymond and a number of Colonel Falzerano's colleagues in the Air Force and Space Force about the impact he had on all those he worked with.
I can think of no better way to
I've got a
honor
little-
Tom Falzerano and his family than with today's launch
little
of
video
our third
here.
GPS-3 satellite from Cape Canaveral. As a former commander of the 45th Operations Group, Tom not only understood the critical importance of our launch capabilities here on the Eastern Range, but he dedicated his entire military career to ensure our nation's space capabilities like GPS continue to fuel our modern way of life and our modern way of war. Tom was an incredible officer, leader, father, and friend who made a difference. He was in his prime as he led the 21st Space Wing at Peterson Air Force Base at such a critical point in our nation's history. Before that, he served as my senior executive officer, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes and put in long hours as we established the United States Space Command, our nation's 11th Combatant Command, and the United States Space Force, our newest branch of the Armed Services.
Also signal Maryland's expected.
Tom made a difference in the lives of his teammates and those he led. He will always be remembered for caring for his people while taking care of the mission. Tom had that unique gift of connecting with everyone he came in contact with. He always had a smile and a word of encouragement, no matter how demanding the situation was. Tom made a difference in the lives of his family. No one loved family more than he did. And in fact, Tom made us all feel like we were part of his family. As we watch today's Falcon 9 soar high into space, let Tom's legacy be a reminder for all of us to make a difference every single day, and how our greatest legacy is found in the relationships and the investments we make in the people around us. My sincere thanks to SpaceX, the 45th Space Wing, and the entire launch team for honoring Tom's legacy.
Nobody knew how much the United States and our international allies rely on space capabilities every minute of every day more than Colonel Tom Falzarano. Tom took his mission responsibilities very seriously, but he was passionate about developing and taking care of the people under his command. Although we lost him well before his time, his outstanding legacy will live on through the air and space professionals he led and mentored during his 26-year career.
Omega model in the background
For
there.
Tom's
Nice.
family and in honor of his memory, on behalf of
And a
the 6,000
KC-135.
professionals of the Space and Missile Systems Center, we will continue to protect and defend the global commons of space and continue to mentor our people, which he so clearly cherished.
Today's launch is dedicated to a warrior, a husband, a father, a friend, an American hero, and a man whose example and leadership will continue to influence our Air and Space Force well into the future. We're dedicating today's launch to Colonel Thomas Falzarano, who was the commander of the U.S. Space Force's 21st Space Wing when he tragically passed away a few weeks ago. In a way, dedicating this GPS-3 launch to Tom is wholly appropriate, as this next-generation satellite provides navigational guidance to the nation and the world. So did Tom provide lasting guidance and inspiration to all those he led and served with. It has been our great privilege to have known and served with Tom Falzarano, and we are proud to dedicate this launch to him.
Colonel Falzarano was a strong, steady leader who was an instant friend to everyone he met. He built lasting connections everywhere he went, and he cared intensely about everyone. Here at the 21st Space Wing, we miss him every day, but we'll honor him and continue our mission. Strength and preparedness always.
Colonel Falzarano led us by example to give of ourselves completely and compassionately. He taught us what it is to be built to last, to ensure what we build today will outlive us and last for those who come after us. As we reach again to the stars, let us strive even higher to be built to last.
It's only fitting this launch today be dedicated to Colonel Tom Falzarano, a great American hero. On behalf of the 50th Space Wing and the men and women of Schriever Air Force Base, thank you for your service, thank you for your sacrifice, and most importantly, thank you for your partnership over the course of the last year.
Colonel Falzarano, teammate, leader, wingman, guide. Much like the GPS, you get people to where they ought to be. Proud to have served with you.
Colonel Tom Falzarano was a true friend of the 30th Space Wing and a personal friend of mine. I've known Tom for over 20 years when he and I were captains together at the 564th Missile Squadron in Great Falls, Montana. Tom is the kind of person who would do whatever he could to help another airman. He looked out for the folks that he led, and he looked out for his peers. And it was my privilege for the time that we were serving as wing commanders together to serve next to him. Chief?
Sir, I had the pleasure of working with Colonel Falzarano as a teammate in Air Force Base Command headquarters, consummate professional, consummate leader. You're missed, sir.
We're gonna miss you, Tom.
It is so fitting that we as an Air and Space Force remember Colonel Tom Falzarano with this GPS launch. Tom spent a lot of time in Florida, and in particular, as the 45th Operations Group Commander, he sat on crew for many of our nation's most important launches. Tom was truly a people person who loved his airmen and enjoyed hearing their stories. He was caring and kind to everyone he met and always found time to brag about his family. To Stacy and the children, it is our honor to represent the 14,000 men and women of Team Buckley and honor Tom for his leadership and service to this nation. For many of us who personally knew him, we'll light a cigar in his honor after a successful launch. Here's a toast.
It's my pleasure, along with other leaders of the United States Space Force, to honor the life of Colonel Tom Falzarano during the SpaceX Falcon 9 launch of the next GPS satellite. Colonel Falzarano is a former commander of the 45th Operations Group, and his legacy is felt throughout the Eastern Range. We have a saying in the 45th Space Wing: once a shark, always a shark. And the sharks of the wing are so sad to hear of the passing of Colonel Falzarano. We'd also like to pass on our condolences and tell Stacy and the children that our thoughts and prayers are with them. Falsey, I just want to say thank you for your many years of friendship to me personally, and to your many years of service to the United States and the United States Space Force. You left us too young. You are and will continue to be missed. Thank you.
That's how you do a good tribute. Alright, I'm gonna go silent here for a second. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Loss of signal, Goonhilly expected. Loss of signal, Oak Hangar as expected. Acquisition of signal reef. Also signal Diego Garcia as expected. AOS Tasmania. And back engine chill started.
Alright. We'll be coming up on the second burn in a few minutes. About 3 minutes from now, I believe. As designated here by SES2 or second engine start 2. And then SECO2 second engine cutoff 2. During this stage, the second stage and the payload, GPS-3 satellite, will, GPS-3, serial number Space Vehicle 3, will, go from a 200 by 400, roughly 200 by 400 kilometer orbit, into a 400 by 1,000 kilometer orbit, I think, or maybe higher than that. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, it's going to increase its apparatus by quite a bit.
Welcome back to the webcast of the Falcon 9 mission carrying GPS-3, Space Vehicle number 3 for the U.S. Space Force. Now, if you're just joining us, we had a smooth liftoff at 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by separation of the first and second stages. We then had a successful burn of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine, and that placed us in the desired parking orbit. You can see on the screen, we're currently 422 kilometers up. We're passing south of Australia right now. Our next major event coming up in just 30 seconds is the second start of the upper stage engine called SES2. Currently, from the orbit graphic, we are receiving data through our ground station in Tasmania. Second stage is firing settling pulses using cold gas. Make sure propellants are at the top of the inlets of the pump, ready to light that engine.
You want to make sure the fuel's actually in the engine, or where the pumps can feed the engine when you get to fire it.
We've got video of the upper stage engine, and we've got startup confirmation.
There it is. Burn should last for about 45 seconds.
Propulsion confirms we are up on power on the MVAC-D engine. Now the second stage will burn for 44 seconds, and that's going to add over 2,000 meters per second to the speed of Falcon 9 before we shut it down for the second time. Now this shutdown event might be called out as SECO-2. Now this burn that we are in right now will place the GPS-3 space vehicle into the required orbit prior to separating it from Falcon 9.
Coming up
Views
on
coming to you from
shutdown.
2 cameras on the bottom of the second stage as we switch back and forth so that we can see both sides of
Shutdown.
the engine. We've got shutdown, waiting for orbit confirmation.
Should have a call up pretty soon.
Nominal insertion
There it
orbit.
is.
And it was kind of faint in the background, but if you heard it, we have confirmation that the second stage is in a good orbit. This is the one we needed to get to place the GPS-3 satellite into its transfer. We're now going to head into a second coast phase with the GPS satellite still attached to the second stage. Now the plan is to deploy the GPS satellite in about 24 minutes. Now this wait period is caused by a couple of requirements. First, the second stage begins a slow spin that will provide stability to the GPS satellite when it separates.
Makes
So it gives it a
sense.
slow spin.
United Launch Alliance is a similar thing.
Second, we also have to wait until the GPS satellite itself is in view of 2 Air Force ground stations,
Also
one in
makes
Hawaii
sense.
and one in California. So those steps will be met at T plus 1 hour and 29 minutes, and that is when the separation of GPS from stage 2 is planned. So I'm going to pause commentary now during this coast, but we will come back for separation in about 23 minutes at T plus 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 30 seconds.
All right. So I'm going to take a short break to come back in about 20 minutes. Not really much to talk about when it's just this screen. So I'll just leave the music going and you can watch the animation.
What's the signal Tasmania is expected?
coming up on 10 minutes to deploy at T plus 1 hour and 29 minutes. Approximately 1 hour 29 minutes. You can see just how big the Pacific Ocean is. That's like half of it, if that. You can see a little bit of South America down here. And New Zealand. But that's like half of the Pacific Ocean. Probably less than that. Anyway, they're waiting for contact with Hawaii and California to separate the satellite. It'll be another few minutes. Hawaii is probably up over here. California is over the horizon over here. Need to get up, probably up to about right here before it can make contact with that. We've got deploy coming up, but it's going to be another 10 minutes about. Yeah, another 10 minutes at least. Well, about 10 minutes. So, I'll go quiet again for another few minutes.
Acquisition signal, Hawaii.
As you can see, the telemetry has been updated since they got telemetry from the stage through Hawaii and or
Acquisition signal Vandenberg.
Yeah, we're going to be coming up on deploy in about 5 minutes. I need to spin the stage to stabilize it, and what is that? Oh, this is the start. That's Florida. Okay, that's where the orbit started a while back. Alright. So yeah, they've got contact in Hawaii, and they're about to get it in California. Oh, there's video. Oh, they're starting to spin it, see? Unless the signal from the camera. Oh, there's the front. There's the satellite. You see how they've started to spin it? It's doing a slow axial roll, I believe. And that's just to keep it pointed in the right direction. About 4.5 minutes now, give or take a minute. Deployment is coming up at a T plus 1 hour 29 minutes and change. It's currently in a 400 by 20,000 kilometer orbit. The stage will release the satellite in a few minutes, and then the satellite will be up to the satellite to get into its final orbit. The stage will continue coasting until apoapsis, I believe, the 20,000 kilometer maximum height of the orbit, and then it will do it itself. I'm not sure it'll do orbit at apoapsis. It might just do orbit at some other point in the orbit. And by do orbit, I mean it'll turn itself around and fire the engine, so it'll come back down into the atmosphere. So the only thing that's left in orbit is the satellite, and maybe some small screws and bolts and stuff. But those will come down eventually anyway. Well, not at this altitude, they won't. Not in this orbit, but in the previous orbit. About 2 minutes now. Approaching 4,000 kilometers in altitude. temperatures drop below 25,000 kilometers per hour. And we've passed 4,000 kilometers. We're about a minute from deploy.
Welcome back to our launch coverage of the GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 3 mission for the United States Space Force. Now, if you're just joining us, we had an on-time launch at 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by successful ascent, stage separation, and 2 second stage engine burns. On your screen is a view of the GPS satellite atop Falcon 9. Now, one note earlier,
You can start seeing some radiation
our 88th
artifacting
successful launch. It's
in the
actually our
camera.
87th successful launch today. So coming up in just about 15 seconds from now is our last major milestone, and that's deployment of the GPS-3 satellite from the second stage.
And
payload
there we
separation
go.
confirmed.
And successful confirmation of the spacecraft continuing on to perform its mission. From here, the satellite will undergo some activation checks and perform burns to raise into a circular orbit about 20,200 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And with that, that's actually going to complete our primary mission. Now, another note, if you were watching our webcast earlier, we accomplished another recovery objective today, and that is successful securing of both the fairing halves that we jettisoned early on in the mission. So we'll have those for use on a future mission. And that's going to bring our webcast coverage to a close.
Alright, they got both fairings.
Great view looking at the GPS satellite moving away from the Falcon 9 second stage. We want to thank the United States Space Force for entrusting us with today's GPS-3 Space Vehicle 3 mission, and we also want to thank the satellite manufacturer, Lockheed Martin. SpaceX is one of 2 certified providers for national security space launch missions, and we're proud to be able to offer reliable, cost-effective launch services to the U.S. Space Force. We look forward to the additional GPS missions we will be supporting in the future. I also want to give out a special thanks to the 45th Space Wing for the range support out of the Eastern Range today. And finally, with this last view, watching GPS-3 satellite number 3 drifting away in the distance, we want to thank all of you, our viewers, for tuning in, and have a good day.
Alright, let's go back and watch the launch, and then we'll wrap it up.
Stage 2 for launch.
Mission directors, go for launch.
Well, it's...
We've heard the...
4, 3, 7, 6, 5,
Alright,
4,
I'll sign off
3,
now.
2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff. Go Falcon, go GPS.
Vehicle is pushing down right. Chamber pressure.